Wow, that was some story. Oh, hello. I just came back from the island of Sodor. Thomas was telling me a story about a train called 700. You know, a while back, close to Halloween, he said he told the same story to the engines. And, well, Rebecca and Will were sent to the harbor where Thomas said the story happened. And, well, let me tell you about what happened, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. One dark and rainy night on the island of Sodor, the engines found it hard to sleep. "You know," said Percy, "it's nights like this that is perfect for a story." "Yes, a scary story," said Nia. "So, does anyone have a ghost story to tell?" asked Emily. All the engines looked at one another, and then Thomas spoke up. "I have a story that will make all your funnels quiver." "Please tell us, Thomas," said Rebecca. "All right, let me tell you all about 700. 700? Who was that?" asked Percy. "Well, Percy, 700 was an engine that used to work here until she was involved in a crash that killed herself and her passengers and also 2 other engines." "Oh no, Thomas," said Gordon. "We are not listening to that story." "Yeah, I remember what she did. And not only that, but she was the reason that my harbor closed down," said James. Thomas looked crossly at the 2 big engines and said, "Okay, first of all, James, it wasn't her fault. It was Gordon, Jack, and Boris's fault that made 700 kill herself and the passengers, and including the 2 engines, Jack and Boris themselves." "Me?" said Gordon, shocked what Thomas just said. "Thomas, what are you talking about?" Thomas looked at Gordon crossly and said to him, "I'm talking about when 700 was still alive. You, Jack, and Boris did nothing but bully her when she was doing such a good job with her trains. And not to mention that you told her that she didn't deserve to pull her own passenger trains. Need I say more, Gordon?" After Thomas said that, Gordon looked at his buffer sadly. When the other engines heard that, they could not believe what they just heard. "Gordon, did you really say those things to 700? asked Rebecca. Well, Gordon, how could you do such a thing?" said Nia. I was a young engine back then, Nia. I didn't know sense." "Nevertheless, Gordon, it was your Jack and Boris's fault of what happened to her," said Thomas. "Please, Thomas, tell us about her," said Emily. "Very well, Emily," said Thomas. "Here's my story about 700. Before he could tell the story, Gordon once again spoke up. "I still think this is a bad idea, Thomas," said Gordon. "Yeah, me too," said James. "Well, tough, you two," said Thomas crossly. "Nia, Percy, Emily, and Rebecca want me to tell them the story, and that is what I'm going to do." Gordon and James looked at each other, knowing that this was going to be a bad experience once again. "Now then, here is my story, you 4, and this is the story Thomas told them about 700. Long before you all came here, there was just me, Henry, Edward, Gordon, James, Jack, Boris, and 700. 700 was like me, but she was a little bit bigger than I was, and had 4 driving wheels instead of 6. She was also dark blue with black stripes. She was a hard worker, but no matter what she did, Gordon, Jack, and Boris bullied her with no end to it. Then, one day, the teasing went too far. For in the year of 1952, 700 finally got a chance to pull a passenger train. When Gordon saw her pulling the passenger train, though, he told her that she shouldn't pull a passenger train and still be a useless shunting engine. After that, We don't know what happened, but something snapped in 700's mind. And when she approached the harbor, she shot forward and sped down the line, past the station, and crashed into a shed full of fuel tankers. Before she did, she screamed, "I'm going to kill you all!" And then, after that, she crashed right into the shed full with the fuel tankers. And not only that, but Jack and Boris were in the shed, and they were killed as well. After that, James's harbor was closed, and what was left of 700 was sent for scrap, including Jack and Boris's bodies. The coaches were also scrapped because they were damaged beyond repair. But, like I said, every single one of her passengers died that day, including some workmen. After Thomas finished his story, Percy, Nia, Emily, and Rebecca looked crossly at Gordon. "I can't believe you and those two engines bullied her just like that, Gordon," said Emily crossly. "Yes, even if you were a young engine back then, Gordon, you and those two engines had no right to do what you did to 700, said Percy. Gordon didn't say anything. He just looked at his buffer sadly. Just then they heard a whistling sound. As the engines looked, they saw Will coming towards them. "Hello, Will," said the engines. "Hello," said Will. "So, what are you doing here, Will?" asked Rebecca. "I'm here for you, Rebecca," said Will happily. "Really? What for?" she asked. "Well, Sir Tom Hack told me that he is reopening an old harbor that closed down years ago." The engines looked at each other. Then Thomas said, "Are you saying Sir Tom Hack is reopening James's harbor?" he asked. "Yes, that's right. That's what he said," said Will. "Well, what do you know about that, James? Your harbor is going to be reopened," said Nia. "Yes, I heard him, Nia," said James, "and I can't believe it." "Well, come on, Rebecca," said Will. "We got to get our goods train and head up to the harbor." With that, Rebecca's driver and fireman got on board and built her fire, and then she set off with Will to get the goods train for James's harbor. Once they made it to the docks, they saw Cranky, Carly, and Big Mickey finishing loading the cars. "Hello, you three," said Will, looking up at the cranes. "Ah, Will, you and Rebecca are here," said Cranky. "Yep, we are here for our load," said Rebecca. "But we just got done loading the last car, Chuck," said Carly. With that, Will and Rebecca coupled up to the cars and were just about to leave when Salty came up. "Beware of the ghost up at the old harbor, you two," he said. "What ghost?" said Will. "The ghost of 700, me hearty," said Salty. 700? Who is that? He asked. "I know who she is. Thomas told us all about her," said Rebecca. And then she told Will all about 700. When she finished, Will was shocked. "Well, bust my buffers. That's terrible," he said. "I know it was terrible to hear what she did," said Rebecca. Just then, the conductor blew his whistle, and with that, Will and Rebecca set off with their heavy freight train. As the two engines puffed along the line, the rain had stopped, but then it started to get foggy. "Oh dear," said Will. "This fog is so thick you can cut it with a knife." "Yeah, no kidding, Will," said Rebecca. "Hey, Rebecca," said Will. "Yes, Will?" replied Rebecca. Do you think what Salty said was true, about 700? Rebecca looked at her boyfriend and said to him, Well, Abigail's ghost was real, so maybe the ghost of 700 is real too." When Will heard this, he started to get really scared. As the two made it to James's harbor, the yard manager was waiting for them. "Well done, you two. Now, there is a shed over there that you two can sleep for the night, because we'll need your help to get this harbor going again." "Yes, sir," the two engines said, and set off toward the shed. As Will and Rebecca made it to the shed, Will looked nervously around for 700's ghost. "Now don't worry, Will," said Rebecca. "Everything will be all right, I promise." "I hope so, Rebecca," said Will, still a little scared. And with that, Will and Rebecca went fast asleep. Just then, Will woke up sometime later when he thought that he heard an engine puffing along the line. He looked all around the harbor, but there was nothing there. Then he looked at Rebecca, who was still asleep. "Hey, Rebecca, wake up, please," he whispered. Rebecca slowly started to wake up. Oh dear, what is it, Will?" asked Rebecca sleepily. I think I just heard something," said Will. Just as Will said that, then a sound of a train's whistle could be heard off in the distance. What was that, Will?" asked Rebecca. "I don't know, Rebecca," said Will. The two engines were scared now. Suddenly, the two engines saw a ghost of a steam engine coming right at them. "Oh no! Oh look!" said Rebecca, scared. "I know! I see her!" said Will. Then they heard the engine screaming, "I'm going to kill you all!" But just before the engine hit Rebecca's buffers, it vanished. Will and Rebecca looked at each other and looked out across the harbor. "Rebecca, was that?" I'm afraid so, Will. I think we just saw the ghost of 700. The two engines looked at each other, scared out of their wits. After that, the two engines never got any sleep. They just couldn't bring themselves to go back to sleep. When morning came, they stayed silent for a while as they could work to get James's Harbor back into a good, fine working order. While they were doing this, engines asked them what was wrong, but they stayed silent. But what Will and Rebecca didn't know was that their nightmares were just beginning. But unfortunately, that is a story for another time. Soon, Thomas, I will return, and when I do, you and all your friends will be no more. I'll be seeing you soon.